Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, December 22nd, 2023, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research 2 channel here on YouTube. I'm Bugcat, your host, and please do like and subscribe if you feel inclined to. We discuss some very interesting things on this channel. Well, anyway, guys, the focus of this channel is upon the stone walls in the northeastern part of North America here, and some may refer to it as the stone walls of New England, but it just isn't New England. It's New York, it's Canada, it's Pennsylvania, and Jersey, and elsewhere in California, and stone walls everywhere here, but hundreds of thousands of miles of them. So, as I do from time to time, I like to check on the supposed expert, the self-proclaimed expert on the stone walls, this Robert Thorson guy who wrote a book called Stone by Stone. And it's all a sort of geological account of how the stone walls were built, with the little historical peppering in between, basically, because that's what Thorson is. He's a geologist. He's not a historian or anything like that, but he took it upon himself to explain the whole history of the stone walls, even though so many of them don't make any sense. And even though many of them, there's clearly artwork in stone walls, and there's clearly Aboriginal, native person stonework around these areas, and they know it. So you have in one case you have this stonework by the native peoples who were here, whoever they might have been, and these stone peoples or whatever, and then you have the stone walls as well, which many of them don't make any sense. They're not very high, they're totally enclosed, no openings in them, etc., 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 all this stuff. Okay, Thorson provides all sorts of cockamamie explanations that I debunk in a series of videos on my other channel, my Stonewall Research, the first channel. And I go over this article and what this claim was in this article from Earth Magazine that Thorson makes here about how the oldest documented stone wall in New England dates to 1607, made by English settlers of the Virginia Company along the estuary of the Kennebec River north of Portland, Maine. Okay, so this is supposedly one of these defunct colonies that happened before the Mayflower colony established itself. Okay, the French are already here, okay, in Canada and elsewhere, and they're not here to make colonies. They're here strictly for the resource. So that's why they're not included as settlers of this country or whatever. It's the Mayflower colony actually being established here that made that happen. But prior to that, you had Jamestown, which we all know about, but maybe little known is the Popham colony, which is what I believe Ding Dong here is talking about. However, there is no documentation of a stone wall being built by the Popham colony. There's barely any documentation at all, and whatever kind of documentation there is sounds like a bunch of nonsense and doesn't make any sense. Okay, so I'm going to make this video kind of brief too, because you don't have to hear any long-winded stuff here for your holidays here. And by the way, everybody who's celebrating Merry Christmas and of course Happy New Year to everybody, but I'll be back next week for some more torture for you. So in any case, this is a Wikipedia article. It's just a standard fare of how the colony was trying to be established, and they ran into problems with the Indians, and they couldn't make it, and they didn't have enough food, and they had to make a ship, out of the wood there, the timbers there, and cross again back to Britain and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you read all about it and all that kind of stuff. So it just says right here, let's see, right off the bat here, it says the exact site of the Popham colony was lost until 1888 when a plan for the site was found in the General Archives in Salamanca, Spain. And this is really, cloak and dagger, espionage thing, because supposedly spies stole the original map for the fort that was built there by these Popham colonists there in Maine. Okay, so this plan exactly matches the location at Sabino Head near the Maine's Popham Beach State Park. Later, archaeology in 1994 confirmed the location and the accuracy of the plan. The site is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, so they got to say that right there to let everybody know that, hey, it's all okay. Don't worry about it. Okay, but down here it says Fort St. George was abandoned after 14 months of occupation. Most of the site is privately owned, but part of it is within the Fort Baldwin State Historic Site, which was a fort that was built later on, some, close nearby, but not in the exact location. Between 1994 and 2013, a number of archaeological explorations were done at the site. Archaeological excavations show some, but not all, of the buildings in the plan, and shallow ditches where defensive trenches are shown on the plan. No stonework was found, but many of the defenses are based on the natural geography. No stonework was found, but it was based on the map. Interesting. So let's take a look at this map for a second. I think they have it here. Wait a second. Did I pass it? Yeah, this is the map right here. Okay. It's basically a star fort. And it looks like a pretty substantial star fort to me. And, this is what star forts look like. Okay? Star fort. Right? Look at this one. Star fort. Amazing. Right? Star fort. Pretty substantial star fort. Okay, this one looks like a pretty substantial star fort to me too. Okay, with plenty of brickwork, you can see it all in there. Right? So, no stonework was found? Really? Okay, and not only that, if you were to get like aerial photography going on or satellite photography going on, I'm sure you would find an imprint of that still there. But however, no, and they found no evidence of a star fort there at all. They say about natural defenses against the cliff side to the ocean, maybe. Okay, but it's a very small part of that star fort. Okay, so they finish talking about the first excavations of the area in the 1960s were unsuccessful. In 1994, Jeffrey Brain of the Peabody Essex Museum confirmed the site of the colony using Hunt's plan as a guide. That was the plan that we just looked at, okay? They said they built like 50 buildings on that property or whatever. They found 3, right? Maybe, okay, because I read the archaeological report from the University of Maine, okay? And I read the complete report, the whole thing, okay? They found nothing there that proves anything. That maybe some structures were built there in the past sometime, but there's no proof that's the Popham colony at all. This other old fort built in the 1800s is not far from this place. You're right by the ocean, extremely corrosive to anything, okay? Live trees, not so much, but dead ones, yeah. But in any case, they also found some iron smelting had been done at the using local bog iron. Bog iron? Is bog iron there? Presumably. using local bog iron. But, there couldn't be any sort of iron smelting going on in the Americas prior to the arrival of all these swell folks, right? So, no, but in C.W. Saran's book, The First American, he mentions an author that wrote a book about it. Okay, and not only that, I read a scholarly article about the casting of copper weapons and copper tools by Native Americans as well. They found evidence of smelting in Galena Canyon, but they weren't sure what because there's no gold in the area at all. So they were wondering what they might have been smelting there, right? So, but it couldn't be any sort of iron. Nope. Couldn't be that because, those native people stupid. So even though they found out etching 500 years before Hans Elbrecht in like the 1500s or something like that when he applied it to armor and all kind of stuff, but the native peoples here were doing it 500 years before him and, designing complicated canal systems that, need engineering degree in hydrology to, figure out. That's all. But in any case, this is what's said about this Popham colony, okay? And I read the archaeology report. The first archaeologist was sort of of course, his boss is going to say, you got to say something about this shit. I stay out there to do all the stuff. What you find? Like nothing, right? But the second archaeologist was honest. He said, we found nothing. That's what he said, okay? So he had to be honest. He had, this is something about, look, he's a professor and all kind of stuff. He's not going to put his name on something that he doesn't believe in or whatever. So that's how people are. And they frequently conflict in that discipline there with many things, especially what's going on here in Americas, of course, okay? And so this, as far as I know, I can figure it out, and I read some of the other letters by the captain of the supposed boat, the Virginia, that was built by the colonists there or whatever. Okay, so why take my word for it, really? Why take my word for it? Maybe somebody a little bit brighter than me might have talked about it. Okay, so this is from Project Gutenberg ebook, okay, about the Popham colony, supposed Popham colony there. All right, I'm not going to read everything here because it would take forever. I'd love to read it to you, or maybe just read it sometime as like a LibriVox recording, audio book or something like that because it's kind of long, but it's good. If you want to read it, you can certainly go to it and take a look at it yourself. Okay, so they felt that this was an important kind of thing to look at. And for posterity, I think only 300 copies were made of this, and they preserved one of them here. So in any case, as I said, I'm not going to read it to you, but what happened is that the Popham area of Maine there has a celebration about the founding of this colony there. Okay, and of course, the people in Boston there, the people with the, in Massachusetts with the Mayflower, et cetera, they, they're the ones who say, hey, we're the guys who started the whole colonization thing here. Yeah, Jamestown was a failure, so can't include that. And Popham was a failure too, if it ever existed. Okay, and so they published this sort of this oratory that somebody gives like a speech every year. They invite different guests to give speeches about the Popham colony and all the supposed facts about it and everything. So they publish it in a paper, and somebody responded to the affirmative of it. It's one of the writers here to a Portland newspaper. But in any case, this P person did a rebuttal article about it, about how it was a theory. Okay, the whole notion of the Popham colony in 1607, in his view, was that it was a theory and it was based on nonsense, as he was happy to point out in his letter to the the publication, the Boston Tribune or whatever, Examiner or something like that. Okay, so who was this P guy who dare say there not be a Popham colony? Just some guy writing into the paper, who the heck is he? Some wagon driver or something like that. What's his kick here? Who would dare say any such thing? This is history, United States history. We gotta honor this history, even if it is baloney. But in the publisher's advertisement, because they published all the letters, they thought it was important, so they compiled the letters together and they published it as one in a separate publication, and here it is. So anyway, the writers can have no further motive for withholding their names. We therefore state that the P is Mr. William Frederick Poole, librarian of the Boston Athenaeum, and the Sabino is Reverend Edward Ballard of Brunswick, Maine. And these other guys, Orient and Sagdahock, are signatures of Frederick Kidder of Boston, okay, who wrote in support of it. So this William Frederick Poole, who's the librarian of the Boston Athenaeum, okay, what is that anyway? The librarian of the Boston Athenaeum. So, well, that's what this thing is here. Okay, the Boston Athenaeum, 17 million renovation looks what the Boston Athenaeum, $17 million renovation looks like. Okay, so here's a little picture of the inside of this library here. So what is it? The Boston Athenaeum isn't the inner sanctum you may think it is, although it did start out that way. Among the nation's largest independent membership libraries and one of its first, the Boston Athenaeum was founded in 1807 by a group of local male intellectuals who sought an establishment where they could gather among bookshelves containing the, quote, great works of learning and science in all languages, unquote. The vision would expand to include a gallery of sculptures and paintings, collections of coins and natural curiosities, and even a laboratory. Throughout the first part of the 19th century, the Athenaeum inhabited various locations in Boston. It was housed in a mansion on Pearl Street when historian Hannah Adams became the first woman to obtain membership in 1829. War correspondent Margaret Fuller joined shortly afterward, as did author and voracious reader Louisa May Alcott. While a chemistry laboratory never came to fruition when it was on Pearl Street, the Athenaeum added a gallery where exhibitions of American and European art appealed to the city's cultural enthusiasts. Looks like a fancy place here. A permanent location at 10.5 Beacon Street was secured for the Athenaeum in 1847, and construction began on an Italian Renaissance-style building designed by Edward Clark Cabot. Imposing in scale with elegant formal detailing, the new sandstone-clad Athenaeum stood in contrast with the rest of Beacon Hill's red brick. Architect Henry Forbes Bigelow added a fourth and fifth floor to the building in 1913, and in 2002 another renovation introduced climate control. Now, 20 years later, the building has just completed a splendid revitalization led by Anna Bea of Annam Architects. With titles dating from the 1800s to the present, the Athenaeum has more than 600,000 books in circulation, and its special collections include 100,000 rare volumes, maps, and manuscripts, as well as 100,000 works of art. It has a vast assortment of United States government documents, publications in Native American languages, early Boston newspapers, and a significant portion of George Washington's personal library. Several pieces pieces of art depict General Washington's likeness throughout the institution, including a life-size plaster sculpture by Francesco Cecchi that greets visitors upon entering the 4th floor. Okay, so you get the picture of what kind of library this is, okay? And when this dude was the librarian here, okay, this William Frederick Poole, there's only one librarian for the whole library. All right, so, maybe he might have access to a lot of information that's not available to these people from Maine, I'm sure, okay? And so, without reading a letter to you, he just excoriates these people, with facts. And, it seemed to me, after reading all the articles and doing some research of my own, it was just like a money scheme. Apparently, all the supposed colonizers were convicted felons sent over there with them. And supposedly, with like 45 men, they built this boat, which you would have to have a certain expertise in, boat building, craft work to do this. It had general carpenters and stuff like that, but not shipbuilders and whatnot. They said this boat was built and everything, and this guy, this Poole guy, was like, no way. There's no evidence of any of this stuff. This is a complete fantasy, complete fiction. So this whole notion by Thorsten. So, what pissed me off so much about it is, like, when I keep track of this guy, him and his wife are writing like children's books about it. It's like complete misinformation campaign. All his cockamamie theories and everything else, and that the predominance of the stone walls were built between 1775 and 1825, and these hundreds and hundreds of thousands of stone walls, and what the populations were during these time periods. I go over the demographics for there's only a certain amount of able people going to be available to do this work. And after the coldest decade in 500 years, and the year without a summer in 1816, droves of people left these areas to go west because they couldn't make a living here doing anything, okay? Most of the people stayed in the main cities, but the people in the outlying areas all disappeared everywhere at the height of building these hundreds of thousands of miles of stone walls. Does that make sense to anybody? Thorsten mentioned, just make sure that he includes in there. Well, I had nothing to do. So they built the stone walls. They have to build them that high because, they don't need to do that, because they just erected these wooden, stake type, picket type fences above them, these zipper fences and all this kind of stuff like that. Why would you bother building the stone fence? Well, they had to clear the land of the stone and all that kind of stuff like that. Land was cleared already of stone, right? Okay, because they didn't build the walls. There's no documentation by anybody about building. And they did build stone walls, which some of them did, real nice ones, okay? But these ones that seem not all completely symmetrically square and all this kind of stuff, these ones don't seem like they serve that kind of function. And they vary in size and all kinds of things. I take you through it with actual hands-on research, okay, out there in the field. Thorsten's not the only one that went out and examined stone walls, okay? Did that in Connecticut and Vermont, okay? We found all sorts of things. Jimmy the Paleo Mountain Man, the late, great Jimmy the Paleo Mountain Man, I found all sorts of artwork and stuff in the walls, okay? So, unless colonists and settlers got cute or whatever it was, nobody talks about any of that. I found like a Maltese cross in the wall, in one of the walls on Jimmy's property there. Who put that in there? It's clear as day, two symmetrically split stones around a centered square stone. It just was right in there. I had pictures of it. which I don't have anymore. I wish I could go back up there, but Jimmy's not around anymore. But he's writing children's books and stuff so he can misinform everybody about the stone walls, okay? Only some of the stone walls were built by colonists and settlers. The majority, hundreds of thousands of stone walls, miles of stone wall, built by somebody else up in New England and Canada, in these remote places, going through swamps and bogs and ponds, and that have been documented there for ever since they were making maps. Okay, why would they do that? You can't barely lift these things. That Kevin Gardner in the Granite Kiss says the average stone in the archaic stone walls weighs somewhere between 65 and 75 pounds. You can be working 8 hours on that. God forbid you wedge your fingers in there. Well, farming time's over, buddy. I can tell you that. For stone walls that you don't need to build is a vast forest up there. The whole deforestation nonsense is a bunch of garbage, okay? It's like an endless supply. If you manage everything right, which is what the Native American peoples did, because that was one of their chief resources, and especially among the Iroquois tribe there, okay? The people in the mountains needed food. Can't grow much there in the mountains. Very little, okay, for a large population, so you had to trade. And why not with a cooperative? It makes it easier, right? So they figured that out. They got all their laws from the big man, the great law of peace from the great peacemaker, who is the quote-unquote big man, big man, figuratively. So in any case, it pisses me off that I hear about it. And I think he wrote a recent article for Discovery magazine. More explanation, explaining it all away with these specious arguments about how the frost pushes up the stone and all kind of stuff like that. Yeah, it's all been cleared already. I've been to these places, There's no stones sticking, and there's places where there's stone walls in between. There's giant boulders in there. And they, most of the time, remove these things with these primitive cranes that they had there. That, you had guys come in and do it for you. The farmers weren't doing it themselves. You see, they talk about the farmers toiling and laboring and all this kind of stuff like that. But let's say they just moved right in to these areas with the stone walls and had very little clearing to do. They had young trees and all kind of stuff like that in the areas because they had been cleared not all that long ago, So, they moved into all the choice areas, but all these stone wall areas have no openings in them, right? Except for the ones I found at Maui, which were a total surprise to me in a way that they were purely ceremonial area. The very unusual stone walls in those areas in Maui that I show on my channel there. These are really unbelievable, 6 foot wide, domed, look like a hill, 6 foot wide, but only 3 foot high. Well, what was that for? Just get right over those walls easily, make it easy for you the way that they were shaped. But in any case, that's really what I want to talk about. This, he asserted this. Actually, he didn't assert this in the book. This is just for this article here for Earth Magazine here. And I contacted the journalist here and pestered him about it. This John Manuel Andriot, whatever his name is there. And I pestered him about it. I said, where's the documentation of the first stone wall being built in 1607? Where did he get it from? Did he present any sort of evidence, anything about it? He was like, I don't know. Why don't you ask him? I was like, well, I've written to him and I've gotten no response, so I'm asking you. You're the journalist. Did you ask him where the documentation came from? What's he talking about? The Popham colony? Well, did you hear what this guy had to say about it? This Mr. William Frederick Poole, the librarian of the Boston Athenaeum. They have like every rare, important book in the world ever written over there that you can study and everything else. All the U.S. documents and all kind of stuff. And just, some reverend somewhere making shit up. Because they're going to have a celebration there. Oh, we're the first colony. And, so anyway, they made nice with him. They invited him up there, and he went because he's the kind of guy who'd do something like that. And it just showed that how they could have their differences, and he was treated well up there. Of course, they want to make nice with this guy once they found out who he was. All right, if he was like you and me, fuck you, right? So, any case. On that note, I just wanted to point that out. First of all, this whole Popham colony is a complete farce, fraud, money scheme by the Popham brothers there, George Popham and his brother, who was this magistrate who was like a street, a street robber, like one of these, highway robbery guys. There's no shit. You look up the guy yourself, and heavily criticized by other people of the time as this highway robber that became like a magistrate that, supplied all the money for this endeavor here with these convicts, because that's what he was, this judge. And so that was a common practice in the early days there, because nobody wanted to cross on those boats there, and with that dangerous crossing across the Atlantic there. So they sent convicts over there, for manual labor and freedom, so. In any case, the librarian just cuts it all up into a million pieces there, because he's a super, super smart guy. Okay, and as far as he's concerned, it's a theory. What they're talking about is a theory. There was no Popham colony, and therefore there was no documentation of a first wall being built there at all. Thorson is a fraud. And I said it before. Where's your documentation, Thorson? Come on. Let's hear it. Let's hear the documentation of the first wall being built by colonists and settlers in 1607 at Popham. You didn't mention it was Popham. You just say, along the Kennebec River there, we sort of vague reference to something that, if anybody knew about it, I didn't learn about it in school. I don't remember talking about the Popham colony, the Jamestown colony, yeah. But Popham colony, no, because I think there's a lot of controversy about it until they did the archaeology there, where the second archaeologist said, we didn't find anything. That guy, whatever, gotta make up a story for the boss. No more funding, see? Got it. And, hey, you gotta be very patriotic for Maine, too, right? You're a professor there at university. You can't say, what? This is nothing. So, can't say that, see? Not allowed. So, in any case, this Thorson guy is just a piece of work, because all his contentions, and I go through it, it's one of the earliest videos on my Stonewall Research channel. Here I am talking about the Earth article on here and saying there's no documentation about the first wall being. That's a fraud. It's a lie. There's no such thing. There's no documentation anywhere. I couldn't find anything after a month of searching for it everywhere. At the public library, and you name it, everywhere. There's no mention of a stone wall being mentioned there at all by anybody, written down on a piece of paper anywhere. Okay? And if you go along with the librarian, the library at Boston Athenaeum there, right? Athenaeum there, then, you calling the guy a liar or whatever it is. Well, who would know? Come on, the guy has access to, more information than we can possibly imagine. So, the guy said, wrong. There's no such thing. Therefore, no such wall. Alright, guys. Anyway, I just hope you enjoyed that little video there, because I'm always pissed off at looking at Dawson still writing children's books and misinformation children's books. Oh my God, that's just carrying it a bit too far here. We're going to indoctrinate everybody into this theory of yours because there's no documentation of these things. Just some Robert Frost poetry about mending walls or whatever. Yeah, mending walls are already there. And in some cases, ripping them all down and rebuilding them into something. Hey, look, this is better. So took some, prehistoric walls that had some sort of message in them or something like that, or special building techniques, some piece of archaeology, and tore it all up, which is done everywhere. They're trying to preserve them. That's the only thing we can give them. That people like Thorson are trying to preserve these walls and make laws about them and everything. And they're good. Let them do all that stuff. But they're wrong about all of them being built by the colonists and settlers. That's for damn sure. And some people know it. Some people know it. But not everybody's on board. So in any case, I'll still be working towards advocating for the notion they were built by some other people before the Iroquois, who are not the Algonquin either. Okay, even though the Algonquin lived right alongside these people, we know who they are because the Iroquois identified them when they pushed them out of their geographic area in New York here, in northern part of North America here. They pushed them out of their areas, the stone giants. These large people who built the stone walls. That's the stone giants. Ding, simple as that. All right, guys. Anyway, have a happy holiday. Hope everybody has a great holiday. Please do enjoy yourself and don't think about any kind of serious stuff. And just enjoy the moment. Alright guys, anyway, Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.